Captain Brett White and Sergeant Danny Messina for being here today to do our Citizen Preparedness Corps presentation. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing today?
Good.
My name is Sergeant Messina. I have about 10 years with the New York Army National Guard. I've been deployed both overseas and stateside. I was on the ground for Hurricane Sandy, Irene, and Lee, and I've both been deployed overseas. Now, I am a New York resident, so I know what it's like to go through disaster as a first responder, and I know also what it's like to go through I also know what it's like to go through a disaster on a civilian aspect and come back from that disaster and lose everything. So I can't stress to you the importance of what we're about to go over. Before I do get started though, I want to point out the two emergency exits. There's one to your rear and then one to your front and my left. So in case there is some form of an emergency, just go to the exit that's closest to you and then we'll meet in this parking lot and make sure everyone got out. Also, if you could take any mobile devices and make sure they're on vibrate or at least off. And if you don't want to pay attention, that's fine, but the person next to you might want to pay attention, to just be courteous to them, okay? So at the end of this course, you should be able to do a couple different things, all right? You should be able to describe the 3 different types of disasters that can affect New York State. Know how to better prepare for those disasters, respond to those disasters, and how to recover from them faster. Know how to better sustain yourself, your family, and your community in the event of a disaster, whether it's man-made, technological, or natural. The course will be broken up into a couple different parts. We'll have the welcome introduction in the beginning. Hi, welcome. How's everyone doing? We'll have part 1, which is prepare. And then I'll hand it over to my counterpart, Captain Brett White, for part 2, and that's the what to do during and how to recover faster. And if you have any questions during the presentation, just keep them to yourself, make a mental note of them, write them down, and at the end we'll have a question and answer session and answer any questions you may have. So, the 2014 State of the State Address is the reason why I'm here today. In his time in office, Governor Cuomo has had over 12 disasters hit New York State, from anything from blizzards to hurricanes to forest fires. And he understands, as your governor, the importance of being prepared for these disasters. Because our first responder community is only so big. There's only so many firefighters, only so many police officers, only so many EMTs. And he understands that there's a certain level of preparedness that every single citizen needs to have in order to get through the disaster and reduce your risk going through the disaster. New York State can be affected by 3 different types of disasters. You have the natural, the man-made, and the technological. The natural disasters are just that, anything that can happen in nature. It's those events that we can't control. Now, I'm not here to doubt anyone's intelligence. You can pretty much tell me what's up on that list in pretty adamant detail. But we get a lot of questions about space weather. What is space weather and how can it affect me? We're on planet Earth, right? Well, our little blue dot in this massive universe that we call home can be affected by a lot of different things. The biggest one that we can get affected by is solar activity. Solar flares off of our sun that can mess with our GPS signals and our communication signals. Actually, that's what's going on currently today. There's a lot of EF signals up in our atmosphere that is currently messing with our GPS signals. Not very much, but it's still making a noticeable impact. Man-made disasters fall into a couple different categories. The easiest way to define this genre is either a man-on-man incident, so you have situations like an active shooter or terrorism. Another way is it's either a man-on-man incident or a failure of a man-made object. So if a dam collapses or a bridge comes down or a building comes down, these are examples of man-made disasters. And a technological disaster. This is a relatively new category, because if you think about it, about 25 years ago, our entire infrastructure was not run off technology. Yes, we did have technology, but we didn't rely on it as heavily as we do today. If you think about it, nowadays, everything is run off technology, and that technological system that runs our infrastructure is actually a very fragile system. So just as if when you're at home and your computer freezes and crashes, amplify that to an entire hospital, or entire transportation grid, or entire power grid, cause a lot of problems. Who remembers the 2003 blackouts? Entire Eastern Seaboard lost power for about 3 weeks. That was actually a computer error that caused a chain reaction that knocked out the Eastern Seaboard. Every year, the Department of Homeland Security does a risk assessment for every state in the country. Unfortunately, there is no ideal safe place to live. Every state will have some form of risk. However, the more people you have, the more risk you're going to have. It's just the way that it goes. More people, more risk. Our nation's capital, on top of having a high population, will have inherent risk just being our nation's capital. And then you have New York State. New York State is well off the charts. Now, first off, this is not to scare you. This is to give you an understanding of the type of area that you live in. But we're stubborn New Yorkers, right? And we're not going to leave because it's New York. However, you do need to understand the risks you face living here. And a couple reasons why our risks are so high is we have one of the highest population densities of anywhere else in the country, which means there's more people per square mile than anywhere else. We're one of the technological supercenters of the world. We're one of the financial capitals of the world. When you think of the United States, you think of New York City, which makes us a huge target for terrorism. When we have one of the biggest ports on the eastern seaboard, with a lot of stuff coming in and out, we have also one of the biggest coastlines on the eastern seaboard. You don't think about it, but Long Island is an entire coastline. If you take Long Island, you flip it upright, and you match it to any other state, it's one of the biggest. Now, with all that being said, you need to understand what type of disasters can affect you in your areas. Because you guys living here in South Salem are going to prepare a lot differently than someone who lives on Long Island and is preparing for floods. Now, like I said, this workshop is to reduce your risk. Us as humans, we require certain resources to keep us alive. We need food, we need water, and we need shelter. Now, our government provides us this infrastructure to where those resources are readily available. I mean, really think about it. If you're thirsty, even if you have no money in your wallet, you can still go to your sink, turn on the water, and get a glass of water. Now, with that being said, though, in the event of a disaster, those readily available resources might not be so readily available. Where you go turn on your sink and no water comes out, okay? So some advanced planning and common sense can make all the difference to where if you're ready to go ahead of time, you go turn on your water, no water comes out, that's okay because you have a couple cases of water in your closet ready to go. And that's what we're here to teach you today. Being prepared for any type of disaster really only comes down to 3 simple steps. You're going to develop a family emergency plan. You're going to stock up on emergency supplies and have a means of knowing what's going on before, during, and after. To develop that family emergency plan, first off, I don't want you to go get so wrapped around the axle about the word family. I understand that there are people that live by themselves and people that their family lived across the country. Especially everyone here, it might only be you and your husband or you and your spouse, if that. I mean, kids have grown up, they moved out, they started their own families. So when you see family, we're more talking about the people you're going to go through the disaster with. It could be your friend, it could be your neighbor, okay? But what you're going to do is you're going to gather those people and discuss the why it's important to plan and prepare, and what disasters you're going to affect you in your areas, and make an individual plan for each one of those disasters. You want to pick 2 places to meet those individuals. One right outside your residence, one right outside your neighborhood, for a couple reasons. First reason is a disaster is not going to be a 9 to 5 thing. It's not going to happen when you're most ready. It's going to happen when they're out to lunch with one of their friends and you're at the grocery store. And also, a disaster does not have to be on a national scale to be a disaster. You can have a house fire, lose everything. It's a pretty big disaster to you and your family. It might not affect someone in the next town over, but it is a big disaster to you. And any disaster that you face, any situation you come across, you always want to have a means of getting together with those individuals. You want to develop an emergency communication plan in case communication lines go down. Pick an out-of-town point of contact or relative or acquaintance. And when I say out of town, I don't mean the next town over. When I say out of town, I mean outside what the affected area is going to be. So the further away, the better. If you have a second cousin that lives in California, that's perfect, because this person's going to keep tabs on you while you're going through the disaster. And if you're going through disaster here in South Salem, and you pick someone in the next town over, chances are they're going through the exact same disaster, and they're more worried about themselves than worried about you. You want to be familiar with your escape routes. Know where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. And practice that evacuation route and see if it's actually a good, feasible route. And if not, you got to pick a different route. And does anyone in here have a pet? Dog, cat, fish, hamster, gerbil, parrot? Okay. All right. We're going to go more into this a little bit later on in the presentation, but do plan on how you're going to take care of your pets, because they are a part of your family. You need to understand that certain organizations that you might be associated with will have their own plan. And they're not going to cater their plan to your individual needs. However, you do need to cater your plan to them. A huge example of this was during 9/11, there were schools throughout New York City that went on lockdown. No one in, no one out. Didn't matter if your kid went to that school. Parents didn't know this. And when they saw the towers come down, they went to go pull their kids out of school. Schools weren't going to release them until they got the all clear. This caused a panic, a very big panic across New York City, a panic that really could have been avoided if the parents had just planned ahead and talked to the schools. So if you are associated with organizations, find out what their plan is and see how you can cater your plan to fit their plan as well. Now this workshop is really just a general broad stroke of what you should know and what you should start to plan and prepare for. But there are a lot of different organizations out there that can provide you additional information, and so where we talk about getting yourself a plan, we might not specifically go into a plan of what you should do in a hurricane. Go to another agency and get those specifics on how it can affect you in your area. Now, New York State offers a lot of great services to keep you informed during a disaster and during every day-to-day life. One of the best services that they have is the New York Alert service. It is a completely free subscription-based service. You register your telephone, email address, and you pick the area you want to hear about, and it starts giving you real-time updated information about what's going on in your area. Now, I selected everything on this service, and it tells me from anything when a manhole cover is overflowing with water to when a sex offender moves in close to my neighborhood. So it's a really great service. It's very easy to do and very easy to use. You can register your phone number, your email address at www.nyalert.gov. If you are a little bit more technologically savvy and you want a mobile application for it, you can register your cell phone number at ialerts.com. Now, sirens. We hear sirens on a day-to-day basis. Actually, when I got here at noon, the fire siren let off just to say, hey, listen, it's noon. Now, I'm also a new transfer from New York City where we hear sirens all day, every day. We don't have the volunteer fire department alarms. So when the alarm was going off, it sounded like it was like an air raid, like we were about to get bombed or something. So when they were just saying, hey, listen, it's noon. But there are areas across the state and across your neighborhoods, your towns, your communities that have sirens that mean very bad things. Very close to here, you have Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, and that has a very specific siren if something bad is about to happen. And driving here, I saw a dam. If that dam is about to go, they have a siren for that in case that dam's about to fail. So you need to learn what these sirens sound like and learn what to do if you hear these sirens, because if they do go off, you don't want to be caught in a surprise that you don't know what to do and catch yourself in a very bad situation. Now the EAS, formerly known as the EBS, or the Emergency Broadcasting System, if you have ever owned a TV or watched TV at some point in time in your life, you know exactly what this system is. It's that system that when you're watching your favorite television program, and right at that pinnacle moment when everything in the series is about to be explained, they block out the TV, play the really annoying tone, and usually play a message. We normally don't listen to this message and don't watch it, so we just change the channel. However, this is very good information that they are putting out. The government knows how much Americans like their TV and how much they don't like their TV to be disturbed. So if they are disturbing the TV, it's usually for a good reason. Take that time, read that message, and see what information they are putting out, because it could make the difference whether or not you need to evacuate or not. Now, the organization NOAA, which stands for the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, is a government-run weather service. All they do is broadcast the weather and emergency alerts. Now, they make specialized NOAA radios that broadcast the NOAA channel. Now, with these radios, in the aspect of emergency preparedness, these radios are worth their weight in gold, because they are one of your best resources for getting information. Even if no one is broadcasting on the other end of NOAA, they will continuously broadcast the last emergency alert until, I guess, the NOAA building collapses in Washington, D.C. So, these radios are also very easy to pick up and very easy to maintain. They have a lot of really cool emergency features on them. So if you have no power, there's ones with solar panels on them, you can charge them up your windowsill. There's other ones with hand cranks on them, so even if it's a cloudy day, you can still charge them up and listen to the radio and know what's going on. Some of them have ports on them to where you can plug in your smartphone devices or your cell phones and still have a means of communication. Other ones have a wake-up feature, which I think is a really, really cool feature. Is you can pre-program your NOAA radio and shut it off. Let's say you only want to hear about if there's a tornado in South Salem. So even if the rest of the world is ending, if there is no tornado in South Salem, it will not turn on and tell you. But as soon as there is a tornado, it will turn on and say, hey, listen, there's a tornado in South Salem. So they're really easy to pick up. They're about $20 to $80, depending on how many features you want on them. And like I said, in an emergency, they are worth their weight in gold. Now the WEA, or the Wireless Emergency Alert System, is a pre-programmed service in your phone, or in your mobile device. And probably every single person in this room has heard it before if they have a cell phone. It's usually that notification that comes over your phone. It's the same tone as what happens on your TV. Usually tells you like, hey, there's a vulnerable adult missing, there's a flash flood advisory, there's a severe thunderstorm warning. So who doesn't know what I'm talking about at all? Okay, do you have a cell phone?
An old one.
An old one. Doesn't always happen on the old ones, but you can call your cell phone provider and ask them how you get this service in your phone. They're required by law to tell you, okay?
Is that on a regular phone or just
Just the cell phones. They're not on regular house phones.
If you don't have the regular, and you only have the house phone.
If you only have the house phone, this is only through the mobile devices, okay? Now the See Something, Say Something program was originally established by the MTA. It was that program where if you see an unattended bag in the subway station, a train station, or on a bus, let someone know. Let a worker know, or let an emergency responder know. Now Governor Cuomo loved this idea so much, he took it from the MTA and he gave it to the New York State Police, and he expanded upon it. Now the whole concept behind the program now is really think about it. Who knows your neighborhoods the best? Who knows your streets the best? Who knows your places of work the best? Who knows where you hang out the best? You guys do. You know it better than the police. You know it better than every other first responder. Now, if you see something out of the ordinary, something that just doesn't sit right, you'll know it, you'll notice it better than a police officer who lives 4 towns over and just works there. And it's your job as citizens of your town and of your communities to report that kind of stuff. All those bad things that happen in our country and overseas, like the shooting in California, the shootings in Texas and in Florida, the bombing in New Jersey, could have all been avoided. These pre-planned incidences took a long time to plan. And when I say a long time, not a couple weeks, I mean a couple months, if not a year or two. And during that time, those individuals showed a lot of suspicious activity while doing that. And if you had one American citizen who was a little bit more suspicious and a little bit more proactive, they all could have been avoided. Now, it's very important though, when you're dealing with the suspicious activity, you do not take direct action whatsoever. Do not confront the individual, and don't even reveal that you're suspicious of them. Do record as many details as possible, and do notify the appropriate authorities as soon as possible. The reason why you don't take direct action or confront or reveal you're suspicious is one of a couple reasons. One, it will cause the bad guy to flee, and then he or she has the opportunity to do another incident, another bad thing. 2, it'll make them enact their plan faster, which they're still enacting their plan, they can still do harm. And 3, they might become physically violent to you, and we don't want anyone to get hurt or anyone to get into trouble, okay? Now, if you see those little trifolds that we handed out that say to See Something, Say Something, you take those and you flip those over to the back. That phone number on them, not the New York City phone number that everywhere else in New York State, because apparently New York City gets its special phone number. That phone number goes directly to the New York State Police Intelligence Division. You report what you need to say, give them every detail that you have, and they will go and investigate it. They investigate every single call that comes through their lines. Now, if you're a little bit more technologically savvy, they have New York State developed an application for that called the See Something, Send Something application. It is an application that you can either send a text message or send a picture. It geotags your location, it timestamps the incident, and it gives them a picture of what's going on. And I actually use this app, and it's 2 seconds. You pull it up, take a picture, and it sends it, and they know all the information that they need to know. Again, it's completely free. It's a subscription-based service, and it costs nothing to you. Now, in any type of disaster, we want to emphasize that you and your family are most important. Take care of yourself and your family first. But understand there are people in your community, in your neighborhood, that might not be able to take care of themselves. Not out of lack of want, but physical ability. People who are very elderly, people with special needs, people who are disabled. And only if we come together as one big community and one big team can we get everyone through the disaster. And you want to reach out and help your neighbor, because it might come a day where you can't help yourself and you want your neighbor to help and come reach out to you. Now, preparing your home and your family for disaster, one of your biggest things you need to worry about is fire safety. Fire safety can make or break you. So, by a show of hands, who in here, and don't worry, I won't judge you, but who has a room or rooms in their house or apartment that look like that? Very cluttered, chaos. Garages count. Garages count. Okay, all right. I had a room. I just moved into my apartment. I had a couple rooms that looked like that. Okay, so this is a very bad idea. Okay, now I'm not saying that you have to be neat freaks and know everywhere where everything is, but it is a very bad idea. You're helping the fire out if you have a room in your house that looks like this. Fire will ignite an object, and if nothing's touching it, the other objects won't ignite until it reaches its temperature, a flash, and then ignite that object. However, if all the objects are touching each other, it doesn't need to heat that object up, it just ignites it right then and there. So you're just helping the fire out. Also, if you become trapped in there, you're making it more difficult for the make it more difficult for you to get out, and making it more difficult for the first responders to come and get you out if that needs to happen. So again, I'm not saying you need to be a neat freak, but just at least have your floors cleared to where you have clear avenues to move and navigate around the room. Now, is anyone in here one of those preppers that has like 5 to 10 years worth of fuel in their garage? No? No? Okay, well if you just don't want to raise your hand, I understand, it's okay. But if you are one of those people, understand that combustible liquids, one, the more you have, the more risk of fire that you have. And two, combustible liquids do expire. So fuel and gas only really last about a year. So if you're buying more than what you need in a year, now you're wasting money. And I don't like to waste money, and I'm sure no one else likes to waste money. So only buy what you need. If you need a little bit extra because something's going to happen or we're going to have a blizzard or a snowstorm, you want a little bit extra for your snowblowers and generators, buy that little extra, but don't go overboard and buy 30 years worth of fuel because it's just going to be a waste of money. Now, smoke detector. Smoke detectors are one of your best lines of defense against a fire. A lot of the time they don't work though, for one common simple reason. They either have no batteries in them or the batteries are dead. Now, who changes their batteries when that little beep happens? Okay? You've waited too long to change your smoke detector batteries. Okay? Trick question. So you've already waited a little too long. Because for that beep to go off, your smoke detector had to die. It acts another battery inside your smoke detector to start beeping saying, hey, you really need to change the batteries. So, most manufacturer guidelines of smoke detectors will tell you twice a year. You need to change it every 6 months. So one of the most easiest ways to remember to change it every 6 months on the same day is daylight savings time. It happens the same day every single year. So when you change your clocks, change your batteries. Even if you changed them 3 weeks beforehand, change them again. Because this is, like I said, one of your only lines of defense against fire, especially when you're sleeping. Now, who has a fire extinguisher in their residence right now? Okay, out of all those people that raise their hand, who knows exactly where it is? Like if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's fire everywhere and you're panicking and stuff, you know? Okay, I saw a couple hands like kind of go down, like maybe not. All right, out of those people that kept their hands up, who knows exactly how to use their fire extinguisher? Or is it like a 7-pound paperweight just kind of sitting underneath your sink? Okay, out of those like 3 or 4 people left, do you know exactly what classification of fire extinguisher it is? Okay. All right, we got one. Okay. So, when it comes to owning a fire extinguisher, there's a couple important things to remember. One, have one. Just have one. That's 85% of the battle right there. 2, know exactly where it is in your residence, to where if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up, there's fire, smoke everywhere, you can run directly to where it is, grab it, and use it. The third thing is know how to properly use it. Because if you don't know how to use it, again, it's like a 10-pound paperweight and no, you can't throw it out the fire and it's going to extinguish the fire. You actually do need to know how to use it. And 4, know what classification it is, okay? Because there are different classifications of fire and different classifications of fire extinguishers. There's a class, the most common fires that you're going to come across is the A, B, C fire, A, B, and or C fire. A class A is anything that produces an ash, so A for ash. So you have paper, you have wood, ordinary combustibles. A class B fire is anything that boils, so like a cooking grease fire or kitchen fire. And a class C fire is anything that produces a current. Like if that projector on that table right there caught fire, that would be a C, a class C fire. Now, out of all those classifications, how many of those do you think you could put water on? None? Wow. A. Not none, you can put A. On A, you can put water on A. Now, if you put water on a class B fire, you're going to make it worse and spread it around. It's basically the concept of, if you have whipped cream in a cup and you throw water at it and all the whipped cream goes everywhere, that whipped cream is fire, okay? And a class C fire, if you put water on a class C fire, now you have a shock hazard. You can get electrocuted, get very seriously hurt, and or die, and we don't want any of that to happen, okay? Now, they do make class A, B, C fire extinguishers, and I can't sponsor any specific product, but that is probably the easiest one to get for you guys. Because again, 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up, there's fire everywhere. You don't want to be thinking, all right, what kind of classification of fire is it? What kind of classification of fire extinguisher do I have? Do I have the right one? Is it going to work? You just kind of want to grab it, use it, and get out. Now, carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a very deadly gas. It's a very deadly gas because you can't smell it, taste it, see it, or sense it. The only symptom that you'll get with carbon monoxide poisoning is you're going to get really, really sleepy, tired, dizzy, and a headache. Now, I get headaches almost on a daily basis. I don't drink enough water. I need to drink more water. But you also get sleepy on a daily basis. What happens if you get a headache and you get sleepy? What do? You lay down, you go to sleep, take a nap, and then wake back up, you feel great. But if you have carbon monoxide poisoning and you lay down and go take a nap and go to sleep, you're not going to wake back up. So one way to reduce the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning is not to breathe in carbon monoxide. And since you can't see it, sense it, taste it, or anything, don't do things that emit carbon monoxide in a closed area. Like don't do silly things like barbecue inside your living room, or run a generator inside your garage. Or, I know this is a very common one and I'm guilty of this too, run your car with a big mound of snow behind it because you were just lazy and didn't want to shovel out the back of your car. But you're just warming it up and it's okay. And you're like, oh, I'm a little tired, I'm going to take a nap, but you're breathing in exhaust fumes because it's just going to go back into your car. So don't do silly things like that. Also, it's very important to have a functioning carbon monoxide detector. Now, like its counterpart, the smoke detector, carbon monoxide is your only line of defense. Really, your only, other than you, because there's things that are outside your control. Your furnace breaks, you don't know, you're sleeping. Your carbon monoxide alarm goes off. That is your only line of defense that you'll know. Now, it is important to change your batteries in your smoke detector. It's twice as important to change your batteries in your carbon monoxide detector, because again, like I said, that is your only line of defense that you have between you getting carbon monoxide poisoning and you not getting carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, you do need tools inside your residence. Now, you don't need crazy thousands of dollars worth of tools, guys, I'm sorry. Don't go to your wives and say, hey, listen, the Army guy said I need thousands of dollars worth of tools. No, you just need simple tools. My sister has a little pink tool bag that she got from the hardware store. Has a pink hammer, pink wrench, pink pliers, pink tape measure, pink ruler, pink everything. But she has the ability to shut off utilities if need be. If her gas is starting to leak and she goes to go shut off her gas and she needs a wrench to do it, she has her pink wrench to go shut off that gas. But once you turn off those utilities that may or may not be damaged, don't attempt to turn them back on unless they've been inspected and approved by a professional. And I say a licensed professional, not Tom down the road who's really good at fixing things. Someone from the gas company, the water company, or electric company. Now, does anyone have the old style fuse boxes with the fuses still in it? Okay, I got a couple. Everyone else has the switches, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone have something different than those two systems? No? Okay. Fuses, all right? In the event of an emergency, like your sink is leaking and kind of creep into the refrigerator, you don't need to figure out what fuse controls the refrigerator. Hit the big two switches on top and shuts everything off. I'd rather you shut everything off than figure out the fuses and then just kind of turn it on slowly. Everyone else, same core concept. You do not need to figure out what switch controls the refrigerator. Hit the big switch on top, shut everything off, and then slowly turn it back on. Now, okay, so can't step backwards. All right, so when shutting off your fuel gas, okay, when it's a lever or a switch, if the valve is perpendicular to the pipe, meaning it's running the opposite direction of the pipe or making a T with the pipe, the gas is off. When the valve or the switch is running the same direction as the pipe or parallel, gas is on, okay? Now, who likes to barbecue? Propane tanks, propane or charcoal? Propane. Turning off the fuel or gas when it's a knob, like when you're barbecuing in a propane tank, use the childhood mnemonic, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Turn it to the right, you're tightening it, gas off. Turn it to the left, you're loosening it, gas on, okay? Who has a fuel or a kerosene tank in their house? No one? You're all on gas? One, okay. The big tank outside. Okay, that one. Yep, that one. Same concept, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Right tight, off, left loose, on. Water supply, same core concept as the gas with the valve. Parallel to the pipe, water's on. Perpendicular to the pipe, water's off. Too easy. Once you turn off those utilities, again, don't attempt to turn them back on unless they've been inspected by a professional. Now, who owns a home? Who owns a home? It's required by state law for you to have homeowners insurance, right? So everyone has homeowners insurance, right? Everyone who owns a home has homeowners insurance. Now, those of you who have homeowners insurance, do you know exactly what you're covered for down to the letter? Kind of, sort of, maybe? All right, no? All right, well, it's very important that you do know exactly what you're covered for before the storm happens. You don't want to have this really nice heirloom or this really nice TV that you just bought. You spent a whole bunch of money, you've been saving up for 6 months, and then you have a storm and it sends a piece of wood through that television. And you go call the insurance company and say, hey, listen, my TV broke, give me a new one. I have insurance. And they're like, hey, listen, that TV wasn't covered on your policy, so you're out of TV, sorry, not sorry. So know what you're covered for, and if you need more coverage, get more coverage. Now, I'm assuming that everyone else rents or has a co-op? Condo, okay. Well, do you have renter's insurance and condo insurance or co-op insurance? Same basic concept in question. You need to know exactly what you're covered for. And if you don't have renter's insurance, I highly recommend you get renter's insurance, because if you lose everything in a storm, no one's going to help you. Now, when you're stocking about emergency supplies, we recommend 7 to 10 days worth of supplies, possibly longer. You're going to identify and create 2 different types of kits. You're going to have the disaster supply kit, which is the bulk and majority of your supplies in case you shelter in place. Another one is a go bag for each individual member of your family. In case you do need to evacuate, you can just grab that bag and go. First thing you want to put in your disaster supply kit is first aid supplies. The reason why you put first aid supplies is, like I said, there's only so many police officers, so many firefighters, so many ambulances. And everyone's going to be calling 911 because of what's going on. The power lines have come down, I got into an accident. So you can be waiting a little while for an ambulance. And having those first aid supplies, 1, you can stabilize someone, and 2, you might be able to treat the little things to where you don't even need an ambulance. You also want protective supplies in that disaster supply kit. For those who went through Irene and Hurricane Lee, saw the destruction, saw the devastation after those storms, saw the hazards that you faced. Now, 2 things I really want to point out on these lists, because they're probably the most important things on this list, is a whistle and closed-toe footwear. A whistle, primarily, other than calling 911 for help, when you get into trouble, what do? You yell, you scream. Hopefully someone hears you. Yelling and screaming doesn't travel that far. It's going to tire you out and dehydrate you. And you're only going to have a worse time. And if you're stuck inside a building, more than likely no one's going to hear you. A whistle, the sound waves travel a lot farther, you can blow a whistle a lot louder, and first responders are trained to listen for it. Also, you can blow a whistle for hours and hours and hours and not get tired out and not get dehydrated. So it's like a win-win-win-win of having a whistle over yelling and screaming. So they range from like 25 cents to $1, so you might as well just pick one up. Another one is closed-toe footwear. The criteria for closed-toe footwear, because ladies, I know if you can't see the toes, it's closed-toe footwear, right? No, the concept for closed-toe footwear is ask yourself, if you were to step on a nail in the current shoes that you're wearing or boots that you're wearing, if you were to step on a nail, would it go through your foot? If the answer is yes, you do not have closed-toe footwear. If the answer is no, then you're on the right track, okay? But if you don't have closed-toe footwear, at least put something on your feet, okay? Don't go barefoot. Little sidetrack, funny story. While I was at Hurricane Sandy, it's not a funny story, but it's a funny story. So while I was at Hurricane Sandy, one of my main missions was to evacuate Bellevue Hospital in New York City. So we were going up, bringing up cans for fuel for the generator and grabbing patients and coming down. So at one point in time, I had taken a break outside, and on First Avenue, there was about chest to waist deep of like black sludge water that was rolling down the avenue. Now I'd taken a break and I saw an individual who was wading across the water to get to the other side. There was nothing wrong with this. I'd seen this 100 times that day. What made this person special was he was holding his sneakers above the water because he didn't want to get them dirty. I was like, all right, you just don't want to get your sneakers dirty. I get it. People don't want to get scuff marks on their sneakers. I get it. But you still got shoes on, right? No, he was barefoot when he got to the other side.
Wow.
Now, mind you, this black sludge water, if you dipped your hand into it down to your waist, you couldn't see your hand. It was just that black and that dirty and disgusting. So it was worth to him, $120 pair of shoes was more important than the thousands of dollars of medical bills if he had gotten cut or sliced open by something. I don't know, that doesn't really seem like a proper trade-off. So if you don't have closed-toe footwear and you don't have the ability to go pick some up, at least put something on your feet. Now, sustainment. I could stand up here for hours and talk about sustainment and what type of food you should put in your kits. A couple reasons I'm not going to. One, you like different things than I like. If I like tuna, especially canned tuna, and it's amazing, it's great, and I love tuna, and you gotta buy tuna, and you hate tuna, I just wasted my breath, right? And second thing, if you can't access the tuna because you don't have a can opener, what good is it? You're just gonna stare at the can and be hungry. So, a manual can opener, right there, is the most important thing on that list despite everything else. Because again, if you can't access the food, what good is it to you? All right? And I've tried the army thing with the knife in the can and popping open, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. I've broken 2 knives, I've cut my hand, and when I finally do get the can open, there's metal shavings in my food, and I just don't want to eat it at that point. So manual can opener, they're like $2. Now water. Water is more important than food. You can last 30 days without food. You can only last 3 without water. So one person up at state of New York, who makes a lot more money than I do, figured out that during a disaster, you need 1 gallon per person per day. Okay? So for 10 days, if you live by yourself, that's 10 gallons of water. Too easy. What if you have 2 people? It's 20 gallons. 3 people, 30 gallons. See where this math is going? If you have a dog or a cat, that's 40 and 50 gallons of water. Okay? So it starts adding up very quickly. So the same person figured out, because you can't really store gallons of water, you can't really stack it on top of each other, because they're shaped weird, that 5 cases of water per person for the 10 days is the equivalent of 1 gallon per person per day, because they're a lot easier to stack and a lot easier to store. Now hygiene. Hygiene is very important. Just as important as food and water. Now, not many people think about it during a disaster. I want to emphasize during a disaster they don't think about it. Who here has gone through a disaster before? Hurricane, blizzard, tornado, something. So you have prepared for that said disaster. You've done some form of preparing. You're like, I got water, I got food, the car is fueled up. You got, you got cash in your wallet in case the power goes out and you need to buy something. Were you really thinking if you got toothpaste or not? Or do I have shampoo? Do I have enough shampoo to get through the disaster? It's not really something that we think about during a disaster. Okay? I'm guilty of it too. I don't really hey, do I got toothpaste? I have 2, I might need more. You don't think about that. It's not one of those items, but it is just as important. I can tell you from personal experience, from not being able to shower for a month and finally getting to be able to shower, does a complete 180 on your morale. You go from being miserable to happy like that. Second thing is it keeps you free from sickness and disease. And yes, that sickness might not kill you, but it's going to make you going through the disaster even more miserable because now you're sick on top of everything else. Now, tools. These tools are different than the tools you need to shut off your utilities. Who remembers back in the day when the power would go out and mom and dad would pull out that box? That box with the candles in it, crossword puzzles, and everything you needed to get through that blackout. This list is an updated version of that list. So instead of candles, which were really cool and romantic, and I get it, but they're not really safe. One candle gets knocked over, now you have a house fire on top of a blackout and probably a tornado and hurricane, so you're just adding risk to yourselves. So instead of candles, we use LED lanterns. Now, I'm guilty of this. Me and my fiance were going through a blackout, and I left the LED lantern on all night for like 6.5 hours. And when I woke up, I stupidly grabbed the bulb. I don't know why, I was half asleep, but I didn't burn my hand because LED lights don't produce any heat. It was a little warm. It was obviously warmer than other things in the house, but it wasn't enough to even remotely burn myself. So these are a lot safer, they're a lot brighter, they last a lot longer than candles, and they're a lot easier to pick up, and you can reuse them too. Now, a document holder. I don't want you to get so wrapped around the axle of the type of document holder you need. You can have anything from a garbage bag to that $10,000 fireproof safe. What I want you to get wrapped around the axle is having all your important documents in one location. So in case you do have to evacuate, you can just grab your documents and go and leave. Now you want to customize your kits to fit your individual needs and your individual situations. No two kits are really going to look alike. And the reason for that is people have different needs, wants, and situations. Make these kits work for you. Online, there's a lot of preset lists of what should go in these kits and bags and supplies you need to get through a disaster, where some person might need that exactly what's on that list, another person might not. One person might need less that's on that list, and some person might need more. So you're going to use one of those lists. Take that list and make it your own. Add to it, take things away, make it work for you. Now, a pet kit. First thing I want to point out is don't leave your pet behind. First off, who would leave their pet behind? No one, right? You say that. You say that. Look at Katrina, Irene, Lee, Sandy, Irma, what was the other one? Harvey. Thousands and thousands and thousands of pets get left behind. Every single disaster we have. And it's horrible. They're like, oh, I would never leave my pet behind, a member of my family. Yeah, okay. He shouldn't get left behind, or she shouldn't get left behind, because they are a member of your family. And they can't really take care of themselves. But you see it every single disaster. Thousands of pets get left behind. And first responders go in, and they'll go and rescue the pets. And now, I'm not saying that we're wasting, but we're using resources, manpower, and time to rescue animals that shouldn't be there in the first place. Okay? And also poses a hazard to said first responders, because Scruffy hasn't eaten in 3 weeks, and Mr. Firefighter or Mr. Soldier or Mr. Police Officer comes in and it looks like a T-bone steak to Scruffy. So just take your pets with you. Plan ahead and take them with you. Now, understand though that your pets and your animals are going through the disaster too and are just as scared as you are. Consider them to be a small child. And just like you would with a small child, you would distract them, right? You bring their favorite toys, bring some games, maybe a movie for the child to watch. Do the same thing with your animal. Bring their favorite toy. Maybe bring some treats. Maybe bring the iPad with their favorite television show on it because they like watching TV. So get them through the disaster as well. All right. You also need their immunization records, their vet records if you're going to go to a shelter. This is for your animal safety and other animal safety. Okay? Now, if you evacuate, you're going to take your go bag. Your go bag is a more lightweight, portable version of your disaster supply kit. It has everything you need in it to get you from point A, your inadequate shelter, to point B, your adequate shelter. Okay? Keep it as lightweight and portable as possible because you might be walking with it. But also make it work for you. Like if you want to put it on wheels, put it on wheels. Now this is a very basic bare minimum list of what should go in your go bag. Again, take this list, which is available to you through the resources that we provided. Take this list and add upon it. Make it your own. Take things away. Like maybe you don't need spare eyeglasses because you don't wear glasses. Or maybe you need 2 cell phone chargers instead of just 1. Now you want to also identify expiration dates. This is also very important because the goal of these kits is to not use them. But if you look at history, how long ago was Hurricane Sandy? It's almost 5 years ago. Who knows of an expiration date that goes past 5 years? I can think of like 3 things. And it's Spam, honey, and Twinkies that have an expiration date past 5 years. All right, so unless you want to be eating Spam, honey, and Twinkies through the disaster, you need to create a rotating stock. What I do, and my fiance does, we have our food, we'll maybe buy a little bit extra, and we'll incorporate those disaster supplies into our daily food and meals. We get a little lazy though, we'll invite a whole bunch of friends and family over and feed them expired food so it doesn't go to waste. My clicker stop working? No? Okay. You want to learn basic first aid? Hello? All right, we're good. You want to learn basic first aid. That's also very important. Basic first aid can actually save your life or your loved one's life. Again, you might be waiting a very long time for that ambulance, and it could mean the matter of life or death if you know first aid or not. Now, you don't need to be heart surgeons or brain surgeons. Just know generally how to treat things, like knowing how to stop bleeding, treat burns, head and neck injuries, knowing how to treat hot cold weather emergencies. Those little things that you can treat and stabilize and wait for an ambulance. Now, my disclaimer here is this is no way a CPR AED course, not whatsoever. Okay, so don't leave here and be like, I'm CPR certified. Don't do that, because this is not a CPR course. However, I do recommend that you do take a CPR course or an AED course. This is just one more tool that you have in your pocket to help you get through the disaster. If it's offered to you, take it. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for, but it's an invaluable resource that you have, especially when going through a disaster. Now, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Do you want to take a 10-minute break, or do you want to just keep rolling through? Rolling through? All right, I love it. Democracy at its finest. So, but that does conclude what I do have to say, and I hope you guys did learn something. And at this time, I will invite my counterpart and partner up, Captain White, to go over what you need to do during a disaster and what you are to do after a disaster happens. All right, thank you so much for being an awesome audience, and have a good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. All right, very good. All right, my name is Captain Brett White with the National Guard. I do this job with Sergeant Messina 5 days a week, but we also have our part-time job as we do 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year for the National Guard. We're both in the Army National Guard, but we do have Air National Guard members also in the program because this is a statewide program. We have 8 teams. We covered just the lower Hudson Valley, so Westchester and Rockland counties, all the way up to Columbia and Greene and out to Sullivan County. So this is a free New York State program, so we want to start thinking about now if anyone's interested in having this presentation at another location, whether it's another senior center, retirement group, church group. We do this during the day, in the evenings, and on weekends when we're not doing military training for really any age group in schools, places like that. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. So if you're interested or you know someone that might be, please let me know afterwards and I can give you some information and hopefully we can set something up. Now, as part of my job, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, I'm a logistics officer. And in that role, I've had to respond to disasters a couple times. First time was back in 2011, Tropical Storm Irene. My unit, which was based near in Lake George area at the time, we had tractor-trailer trucks, and we were told to go down to Long Island in preparation. So we drove down there, we pre-staged at this brand new armory, it just opened, and we're like, all right, we're gonna be there, we're gonna be ready so that when the storm hits, we'll be able to go out and start doing things. And so we rode out the storm, came in through the middle of the night, we saw the transformers blow up, power went out, and it was only then that we realized that whoever designed the building didn't connect the backup generators to the toilets. So, you know, not great planning there. Maybe it wasn't finished yet, I don't know, because the building had opened like literally a week earlier, or not even. So we were rerouted back upstate to the Adirondacks where there was a lot of damage from the flooding because of the tropical storm. So I saw firsthand the devastation that took place both to man-made structures and to the environment, because there was a lot of soil erosion, trees knocked down, in addition to the flooding that impacted people's homes and businesses. And during that disaster response, Governor Cuomo started another program called Labor for Your Neighbor, which ordinary citizens volunteered their time and effort to help out folks who had been impacted by the disaster. Because with these large-scale disasters, there's not necessarily going to be enough people to go around to help out all at the same time. So there's only so many firemen, first responders, there's only so many National Guardsmen, all right? There's only so many of us nationwide, and we do get called up every once in a while, but as if you've been keeping up with the news recently, we've been sending people from New York State to Texas to Florida, and I think to either the Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico to help out. Now, there could be more activations later, but we don't know. So that's one of the reasons we always have to be prepared. And that's what the idea behind the Labor for Your Neighbor program. People who weren't impacted by the storm or were prepared, they came to help out and compliment us because there just wasn't enough of us. So they helped clean up people's homes and businesses that had gotten flooded. Also, more recently, back in March, there was the blizzard that happened, and my unit is based in Binghamton. Some of my soldiers, they were called up to be drivers for nurses and doctors to and from hospitals in the Binghamton area in Humvees because the roads hadn't been cleared properly of all the snow. So even though this is what we do 5 days a week, it can sometimes be part of what we do for our full-time job, or for, our specific military duties. All right. So once a disaster strikes, you pretty much have two options. You're going to be sheltering in place or you're going to be evacuating. You've already come up with the plans in the prepare portion, so now it's just a matter of executing it. So, all right, this happens, all right, you know exactly what to do. And if there are evacuation orders, absolutely follow them, because it's not something that you can be trained and say, oh, I went to that course with the National Guard, I'm okay. No, it's not okay. It's a life or death situation. Like in Florida recently, they had the storm surge. In some places it was predicted to be up to 15 feet. Okay, no amount of training is going to prevent you from being impacted by that type of disaster, right? So it is a very important thing. Also keep in mind that if you have to shelter in place, it may be a forced shelter in place. Something may happen and the authorities say, no, you have to stay at home because it'll be too dangerous for you to go out. Now you do want to check on your neighbors, because even though you may be okay, even someone right next door, they may have had a different situation and they may not be all right. Authorities will be continuing to put out a lot of information, because as the situation develops, different things are going to happen, and they're going to give you more advice, hopefully, right? And even again, drawing from the recent thing that happened, the hurricane that happened in Florida, they thought it was going to hit the East Coast and it hit the West Coast. Just shows you that nature is unpredictable. Meteorologists do their best to forecast exactly what's going to happen, but no one knows for sure. If you're going to be using generators or space heaters, make sure that it is in a properly ventilated area so that you don't have carbon monoxide. Obviously, you want to have your alarms. I know for my apartment, I've got 2 bedrooms, so I have one in each. They're both battery powered because, for me, it makes sense. People aren't going to be likely to be turning on their generators or space heaters right when they're still powered. So I'm thinking, well, you're going to have batteries. And although that's one more thing to check, to me, it seems like a good idea and it's worth it for me. Now you have that out-of-town point of contact. Make sure you contact that person to let them know what your situation is. You don't want to have loved ones worrying about you and possibly coming to the impacted area to look for you, because that's kind of the last thing we want, more people in an impacted area during a disaster. And even though one of the reasons we do this is you may only get one phone call out because there may be a communications failure, even if there isn't a communications failure, you may be too busy dealing with the situation to be fielding a whole bunch of phone calls from friends and family members. Because when they call up, you're just going to say, look, I can't talk, I'm busy dealing with the situation, call so-and-so, they know the whole story, and I have to go, right? Now, there are some common sense things in this presentation, if you haven't realized that already. One of these is stay away from all down power wires, because I guess not everyone knows to stay away from them, but even when they're down, you assume that they're alive. This program is getting you thinking, so it's not designed to insult anyone's intelligence, because this is something that we don't always, not everyone thinks about every day, right? You don't necessarily want to think about it every day because it's kind of, it's challenging because you think, all right, what happens if your entire home gets destroyed and you lose everything? Not exactly an uplifting thought, right? So, but it is important to prepare because if something does happen, you want to mitigate it as much as possible, and that's why we have this course. Now, 911, there's only so many personnel as we discussed, so only call if there's truly a life-threatening situation. One of the things that authorities may put out is boil water order. Boil water order will be issued because some type of contamination in the system, some type of organisms that could make you sick. So even if authorities aren't exactly sure the impact of the area in terms of scope or how long it's going to be impacted, they'll err on the side of caution and issue it for a larger area. You should do the same for your own home. If you're not sure, when in doubt, you can boil your water, but if it doesn't look right, smell right, taste right, that's where you want to start potentially using your bottled water that you have stored up because you don't want to get sick from ingesting that water. Now, if there is a boil water order, here are your steps. First, you want to make sure that you strain it through something like a coffee filter so you get the large particles out. The next step is the most important one, which is boil it for 2 full minutes. Rolling boil, lots of bubbles. Putting it through something like a coffee machine, it doesn't get the water hot enough long enough. So 2 full minutes. And then perhaps my favorite point of the whole slide is let the water cool. So this is me telling you, don't drink boiling hot water, all right? Everyone's got that? Just like if you go to a place and you get, or a restaurant and you get coffee or hot chocolate, it says on the side, contents may be hot. Basically the same idea, right? So once the water has cooled, then you can use it to, you put it in a clean container and if possible refrigerate it to preserve it for a longer period of time. Now here are the things you wouldn't want to use unboiled tap water for. Obviously it's not just drinking water, it's any type of water that can get to your system. So whether it's brushing your teeth, washing food, or even giving it to your pets, these are all things that are ways to get into your system. Hygiene, for instance, that takes up a lot of, could potentially take up a lot of water, and water is precious. But we have a way around this in the Army, because sometimes we have to go out, spend some time in tents. We don't necessarily have the option to take a shower, like Sergeant Messina was saying before. So what we do is we bring baby wipes with us, and we would take what we call a baby wipe shower, which granted is not as good as a real shower. I don't think anything is as good as a real shower, but after about 3 days, it feels almost as good as a real shower because it's a personal experience. Just a couple months ago when I was at Fort Drum, 3 days, it was in the summer, moving around, doing a lot of stuff, getting really sweaty, really hot, and they're like, well, I have baby wipes, so it is definitely a morale boost for sure. You'll feel a whole lot better. And I have baby wipes in my bag right now, not because I plan on doing any personal hygiene, but in case I spill a drink or something, I have them. They're very useful in many different types of situations. So remember, baby wipes, they're not just for babies. You don't know what you could ever use them for, right? Many different things. Many different things. Okay. So moving on to what happens if you become trapped in a building. Best case scenario is that you'll have a cell phone, you can call for help, and hopefully someone will come to rescue you. Likely someone from the fire department because they're trained in how to rescue people from buildings. But that may not be an option to you. You may not have service, or you may not have a cell phone within reach, so you may have to wait it out. But hopefully there will be someone going around outside your building, seeing if anyone is in there where you are. But what you want to avoid is yelling for help, because that will dehydrate you, it will tire you out, and it will also open you up to the risk of sucking particles of the collapsed structure. So instead, banging on objects is what we recommend, because that's going to make noise, it's not going to tire you out, or if you do happen to have a whistle in your pocket when the building collapses, that's a good option too, but not many people have a whistle on them. I mean, I have whistles, but I don't usually have them with me, so you do what you can. Hopefully someone will be coming around saying, hey, is there anyone in there? Then yes, that's when you yell back to them, but don't be continual yelling. That's what you want to avoid. And you may decide that you assess the situation and think, you know what, it's not so bad, I think I can escape. That's great. Just make sure that if you start moving out, that if you have to move objects out of the way, that could be a problem because it could be holding up some of the other structure and it could collapse on you even further. So this could be likened to playing a large game of Jenga, obviously with much more serious consequences, namely your life is at stake. So it's up to you. You have to assess and figure out what you think is going to be safe. Now, if someone else is trapped, a lot of the same things apply. If you see a collapsed structure, go up to it, staying safe distance away, and see if you can determine if there's anyone in there. And if there is, try to determine their situation, get as many details as possible. But you also want to call for help because you may not be able to rescue them. Likely you won't be able to. But if you can at least start that process of getting the information, so that way when rescuers do arrive, you can provide them with that information, find out how many people are in there, if they're injured, things like that, so that way that will speed up the whole process. Now, if you do the first two things, where you call for help, you find out the information, and then you're just waiting, you're like, oh, it's taking a long time. Be very careful if you decide to go into the building itself, because if you go in there, when the rescuers show up, they're not going to know where the people are, right? You're supposed to be there to point out where the trapped people are. Also, if you go in there, you could get stuck yourself, which means you're one more person that has to be rescued. But big picture, if you go in there and you're stuck, you're not going to be able to help out anyone, right? That's one of the main ideas behind this program. You're going to prepare for yourself and your family so that hopefully you can take care of yourself. And maybe you won't be able to help out others, but at least you won't be a burden on others that are trying to help out people that were impacted in their neighborhood and community. So that's why it's important to, you have to be able to help others first, right? Or help yourself first, that way you can potentially help out others. So your safety is the most important consideration for the reasons I just mentioned. Now, if you evacuate, either because there's an evacuation order, which you should definitely follow, you're going to be more aware. So your neighbors may not be aware that there's an evacuation order. Make sure you let them know because it's a life or death situation. But it could also be the case where you just decide, your family, that it's not really safe anymore, you don't feel comfortable, you have somewhere to go, and you're going to leave. Let them know so that your neighbors aren't looking for you later to help get you out, or perhaps they need help and they're looking for help. So that's a good thing to do. Make sure you know where you're going, how to get there. Having maps is handy because GPS may not work, and likely it will only tell you the fastest way to get there or the shortest distance. Although now they're starting to get to the point where they tell you if there's roads out, which is great. But if that's not available to you, then having a map may be something you'll need. Obviously, you want to take your pets with you, and you have a plan in place for them. And also, if there's time, make sure you do some common sense things like lock up your home, secure your valuables, turn off the utilities, but also write a note, put it on your door, letting folks know that you've evacuated. So if one of my soldiers is going around knocking on doors, for instance, and to clear homes, they can look at the note on the door and it'll say, oh, we've already evacuated at this time, and maybe even where you went. That way we can speed up the whole process because there's probably going to be a lot of people that are going to need to be, a lot of homes that are going to need to be searched, and that'll make things much easier. Now we talked a bit about the go bags in the first portion, but it is very important that you have your go bag and you keep it ready to go, and you keep it in the same place all the time, because even if you get a knock on your door in the middle of the night saying, look, you have to evacuate right now because there's some impending danger, even if you're half asleep, you'll still know where it is. It's one of these things that we learned in the military too. We do training, we do it enough that we can do it practically asleep. So that's good to know. It is challenging to figure out what you need to take with you and what you want to not take with you, because knowing first-hand experience, marching with a heavy backpack, it's not the most fun thing in the world, and you don't get too far before you start rethinking everything you put in there. Like, oh, did I need as many as those, those things, or not? So, but also, some people will say, does it really matter how much weight is in there? I'm just going to throw it in the back of my car anyway, so it shouldn't be a big deal. Well, yes, hopefully you'll be able to evacuate by some type of vehicle, but that's not necessarily the case. 10 years ago, my grandparents who live out near Binghamton, their neighborhood, or their town got flooded, and their neighborhood was impacted as well. Their part of the neighborhood was, their home, their cars were fine, but their part of the neighborhood was completely surrounded by water. So they couldn't get out. Even though their cars were fine, they had to end up having to get a helicopter ride out of their own neighborhood, which although was rare, is New York State, and flooding is one of the more common natural disasters. So just something to keep in mind. Now, when you do get to where it is you're going to evacuate, make sure you let your out-of-town point of contact know that you've made it there safely. And then the final point in this section, and definitely, well, last but not least, for sure, everyone wants to resume life as normal as soon as possible, right? You have to evacuate, go away from home involuntarily because there's some danger. You want to get back, but don't go back until authorities have cleared you to go back, because likely there's some type of danger still present. Okay, going into the recovery portion. All right, so now we have gotten to that point. All right, authorities said yes, it is clear for you to go back, it's safe, and you want to just get home and run inside, plug everything back in, so it is just like you never left, right? That's the goal. Well, there's a couple problems. First of all, you haven't been there, so you don't know what's happened to your home since you've been gone, for however long you've been gone for. If you were just running to your home, maybe you missed the structural damage that happened, so you need to look outside of the building to see if there is structural damage. That way, if you see something that causes concern, you might not want to go in there. Otherwise, you may end up in the situation we just talked about, where you're in a collapsed structure and trying to find a whistle in your pocket, or whatever, trying to bang on objects to get people's attention. Also, you want to make sure that you, before you plug things in, you check those as well, because if those are damaged, plugging those back in may possibly lead to electrocution or some type of shock. So, having already survived these things, I mean, think how senseless it would be to have someone be injured or worse after the disaster, right? And just because the response or the recovery started doesn't necessarily mean that the danger is completely gone. A year ago, Labor Day, there was the storm that was supposed to hit New York City, and it veered off and spun out beyond Long Island, and it was obviously a 3-day weekend. It was really warm, everyone wanted to go swimming, but authorities said, no, don't go in the water, don't go swimming, because that storm is creating dangerous riptides. And if you had gone in the water, you probably would have been sucked out and you may have drowned. So, but if you had gone to the water, you might not have noticed that there was a problem. I mean, hopefully there's probably going to be, I'm sure there were signs, but if you had gone somewhere where you're just looking at the water, you might not have been able to tell. That's why authorities are putting out that information, and that's why it's important to continue to be aware after the event. Now with disasters, likely there's going to be a lot of debris. If you're watching the news, you've seen what it looks like in Texas, Florida, that got hit by the hurricanes, right? There's a lot of debris because all this stuff just got destroyed. I saw it firsthand when I was up in the Adirondacks, where people's homes had gotten flooded through the first level. So you look down the street, you see a whole bunch of homes, and people had taken the stuff out, and if it was not waterproof, it was wrecked. So that adds up pretty quickly. That's why there has to be plans in place for these types of things. And you have your insurance policy. Make sure you contact your insurance company to get your claims process started. Now, unfortunately, some people try to take advantage during these situations, not exclusively during disasters, of course, but that is one of the times. So make sure that you're aware of people that may seem fishy, does someone seems out of place, and if you do come across someone and they try to scam you, don't just ignore them and say, hey, you're not getting me. Make sure you report them to the authorities, because even though you may have the wherewithal to realize that something's not right, someone else, maybe a friend, neighbor, family member, someone in your community may not have the wherewithal, especially if they've gone through a traumatic experience. If you know someone that's normally a rational, clear-thinking, smart person, after they've gone through trauma, that's not the case. Trauma does something to you, and people do things that they wouldn't normally do. That's why it's important to make sure you report them to the authorities, because they've already been victimized once. You don't want them to be victimized again. You have your before photos. Make sure you take your after photos. That'll help when you submit to the insurance company. Warning, never attempt to turn on any gas, electric, or water connections until inspected by a professional. Always assume all down wires are live and very dangerous. All right, does anyone need that repeated? No? Okay, that was the last one, so don't worry. Now, there's a lot of things that we talked about and things that can impact or is part of a disaster, but one of the things that's not tangible, people may forget about, is the emotional damage that can result from a disaster. It's very real. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. If when I was, I can tell you just from being a responder, seeing people whose homes were flooded, it was tough to watch because some people lost most, if not everything, in their home. And I can only imagine what that would have felt like. Perhaps that has happened to someone here. But you see them taking out their furniture, which, okay, insurance company can buy new furniture, not that big a deal for the most part. But when you see people taking out photo albums and things like that, throwing it out, that's tougher to watch because you know that that's one-of-a-kind item. There's no replacement. I can only imagine what that would have felt like if I had gone through that. But knowing now that it could have been me next time, could be. You don't know. You don't know when disaster is going to strike necessarily. So that's why you want to be aware of this. So if you see someone that's having a particularly tough time, make sure you urge them to seek help, to get some professional mental counseling. And same thing for yourself. If you've gone through a traumatic experience and you're having a difficult time, make sure that you seek out the help that you need from a clergy member, mental health professional, some type of counselor. Because it's there and you want to make sure that you get that taken care of. Now going back to the visual representation of our program here, the Circle of Life. Remember, it starts with you and your family at home, and then from there, you can potentially help out people in your neighborhood and then your community. But, as I was saying before, your involvement doesn't have to stop right there. This is a free New York State program, so if anyone thinks they'd be interested in potentially hosting the program, please let me know. If you have any questions, please let me know. I have some things I can hand out. And I have a list you can sign up so that I can contact you. I'll give you my contact information as well. But also, I have a list, another list that's up here, and I'll make sure it's known to everyone.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.